hosts who brought you RuPaul's Drag Race and $1 Million Listing. This is World of Wonders Wow Report. Things that make us go wow.
Hey guys, welcome to the Wow Report. I'm millennial producer Blake Jacobs, and I'm here by myself. Tom, Fenton, and James are still out enjoying the holiday with their families. I hope everyone had a great holiday. This week, we're going to do something a little different. It's going to be a special show, and we're going to look back at all the people that we lost in 2018. And starting off, back in March, we lost one of the great minds, the incredible Stephen Hawking. And in this clip, Ross Matthews, our Wow Celebrity and judge on RuPaul's Drag Race, fills in for Fenton. Let's listen.
Number 4.
I want to talk about, we woke up to some sad news this week that Stephen Hawking, the amazing scientist, an amazing person, passed away. Now, I would lie to you if I said I understand all the scientific stuff that Stephen Hawking came up with.
Well, luckily I'm here.
And that's what we brought Professor Ross Matthews from the cosmetology. I, of course, know more about him from his movie, The Theory of Everything, the movie about him.
Right.
Which, I don't remember facts very well at my age, but I remember feelings. And I remember how much I loved, I'm going to cry, that movie because of his disability, because of his wife standing beside him, about their love growing as this trunk of a tree. And then at some point, 25, 30 years in their marriage, they both found someone else.
Yeah. I didn't see that coming when I was watching the movie. Because I kind of felt like this is A Beautiful Mind too. You know what I mean? The same sort of thing. It wasn't.
He was sort of a dick in real life. He really did. He fucked over his wife. He went with the nurse, didn't he? He ended up with the woman who changed him.
And according to the movie, which I'm sure is a little bit enhanced, and she fell in love with someone else too.
Good for her. He was hot in the movie.
I'll tell you something. I sort of have a crush on Stephen Hawking anyway. I would do Stephen Hawking.
Well,
not today, but I would have done him 10 days ago.
And I just thought that it was beautiful because, I live alone with cats, but the fact that someone can love each other, and there was a permission because of his genius and his ability, that there was a reason for them to stay together and help each other and not to abandon each other when they found someone else. Somehow, their love was this trunk, and then the more love branched off of it. And it makes me think, it's so weird, it makes me think of Randy and Fenton. Because Randy and Fenton, I've told this to them, but they were a couple. They
for
created
25
this business.
30, 25
they had all
years.
this love, and now why they have broken up, not professionally, but personally, they've both found other people. They've both created families. It's like the love continues to grow, and Randy and Fenton are still very connected.
Yeah.
And it just gives me hope, because so many friends are getting divorced. I'm at the age where people get divorced and it gets so ugly.
I do think that might have been a bit of a Hollywood myth-building exercise, because I don't think in real life that they're quite as close as they are portrayed in the movie.
For so little in this world, James.
No, but I think that was just like just a screenwriting folly.
Just a strand like a spider web of hope, and you just cut it in half. Thank you.
I hate to interrupt your black heart here, but I'm thinking, I'm in a relationship now going on 10 years. And so you talk about relationships are really tough. And I'm going to give you CPR in a second.
Excuse me.
But I just think, I would like to hope that after all 25, 30, 50 years with Salvador, that he would let me go be with the hot nurse. You know what I'm saying?
That's beautiful.
And I think that is beautiful. If you're lucky enough to find a hot nurse who'll have sex with you, your partner should let you go.
Yeah. Blake, did you get the hooker that we asked about? Now, I'm just going to share a couple of quotes because Fenton posted a whole bunch of them.
The one quote, really, it makes me cry. There's a couple of them that I just love. Is this the monkey one? I love that.
I'll start. One thing is, however difficult life may seem, there's always something you can do and succeed at. It matters that you don't just give up, which I think is pretty powerful considering his life and his condition.
Yeah, these are
he was supposed to be dead at 21, and he's died at 76.
Wow.
You like the monkey one? Let me find the monkey one.
About how we're just a speck on this planet. We're just
just an advanced breed of monkeys on a minor planet for a very average star, but we can understand the universe. That makes us something very special. And in the Big Bang Theory,
it's true because we're nothing special, and yet we are the most special creatures on the planet. It's just fascinating.
And you're probably the most special of all of us, right? Don't
yes.
You think,
Wait a minute.
How are they making people like James anymore? No.
Yeah, no.
Are you saying I'm special?
Yes, I am.
Is that what this you're incinerating here?
I also love this one's a short one, but life would be tragic if it weren't funny.
It's great.
Like,
that's the best one.
Isn't that really good?
That's the best one, yeah.
But there's more. You can go online. You probably already have to read quotes from Stephen Hawking and
it's just one of those things that we lived in the time of greatness for a moment there, and when also like who's the Apple guy? What was his name?
Steve Jobs.
Yes, Steve Jobs. We lived in this time when we had these wonderful people, and they're going. When we have Elon Musk still, we have certain people, but like just the geniuses and the great people were pushing forward, society and pushing forward technology. And I just worry that we're all moving into an idiocracy right now.
No. Don't live life looking in the rearview mirror. Be on the edge of your seat for the geniuses to come because they exist. All right.
Okay.
He ruined my hope, so I hope your hope is ruined as well. The other thing that we're talking about is that Hawking was born on the 300th anniversary of Galileo's birth, and he died on the birth of Einstein, the same date. So maybe there is some reason in the world.
That is interesting.
All right.
Stephen Hawking will be missed. Now, back on June 19th, we lost another great mind. It wasn't a human mind, but we lost Koko the gorilla who learned almost 1,000 words and became a celebrity in her own right. Passed away, and she was 46 years old. Let's listen.
Number 9.
Well, this next one at number 9, Ryan, I think will fascinate you.
We want to please so badly, Ryan.
I have to stop laughing and I have to get a little into character because I'm a little upset because Koko the gorilla died this week. I don't know if you guys have all been paying attention to the news. Koko the talking gorilla. Did you guys know about Koko?
He was famous.
Koko could sign language.
Koko was a Western lowland gorilla who was born in captivity in San Diego in 1971. And very early on, her handlers noticed that she had an aptitude for learning and that they were able to teach her sign language. And she learned up to 2,000 words.
No, not 2,000.
No, she did. She knows 2,000 words. Wow. She's able to use 1,000 of them. Basically, it's just noun verbs. There's not a lot of adverbs and conjunctions and stuff.
Just like my Spanish.
No, she's able to say like Koko sad, Koko hungry, those types of things.
She would speak?
No, she signs. She says she'll sign Koko sad, Koko want to play with kitty. She loved kittens.
She was super affectionate. She hugged little kittens.
Yeah, she had very famously she had a kitten and she wrote a book about it called Koko's Kittens.
With 1,000 words.
Yeah. and it was a bestseller. It was huge in the 80s. She also was a painter.
The gorilla wrote a book?
Yeah, the gorilla wrote the book. And then she also was a painter of some renown and she had a lot of art openings. She was, for a while there, she was a movie critic. I don't know if you remember this, in the 90s. And she loved Mary Poppins. She didn't like men. She wasn't a big fan of men, but she liked Santa Claus. In any Santa Claus movie, she would say, Koko loves Santa. That would be her review. At another point...
Did Koko ever sell real estate?
She didn't, but there are two very, very funny stories that I just want to tell very quickly. One time, she ripped the sink off the wall in her cage.
That's Barbara.
And when her handlers came in and said, "Koko, what is this?" she signed, not Koko, kitten did it. She tried to blame the kitten for ripping the sink off the wall, which meant that she had an aptitude for lying, and she was maybe so a joke or something. Also, she loved Robin Williams. Oh no, she loved Mr. Rogers. She would watch Mr. Rogers every day, and
she went on Mr. Rogers.
She did, and then he came to visit her, and the first thing she did was take off his shoes. Because that's what he does every day when he's on the show. And so when she met him, she grabbed him and she grabbed his shoes. Isn't that really sweet?
It's kind of heartbreaking. Ryan, any bon mot for Koko? Au revoir.
I'm very sad for her. I kind of want my own Koko. Sounds super helpful to have around the house.
Yeah. I think the thing about chimps or gorillas, what was Koko, by the way?
Koko was a gorilla, a Western lowland gorilla.
I think they're very cute when they're young, and then as they get older, they develop some personality problems, like ripping the sink off the wall. And
well, I know with chimpanzees, they say that you can have them for 6 or 7 years, and then they go through puberty, and that's when they become nasty face ripping off. Yeah.
No, that's not good.
Yeah.
You don't want that.
But come on, for Koko's defense, She ripped one sink off a wall her entire life.
And it was probably Kitty.
Yeah, no,
Damn
Coco
cat.
never had that, but I know like Bubbles, Michael Jackson's, he got a little aggressive at age 9 or something like that.
I think that might be different, though.
Yeah, they have. Because he'd been being molested.
Oh, stop. I did not say that.
It's really crazy how smart Coco was. I can't believe she knew all that. And by the way, that was $1 Million Listing New York's Ryan Serhant, who was joining us via phone. He's actually in this next segment that was filmed the same day. We lost 2 greats that week. We also lost LGBTQ trailblazer Dick Leish. He was president of the Mattachine, and he was a gay activist. He died in June during Pride Month. Let's listen.
Number 4.
So,
This segues kind of nicely into what I'm doing here, which is this week in the New York Times over the weekend during Gay Pride. This is Gay Pride Month. A gay rights pioneer, trailblazer, passed away at the age of 83. His name is Dick Leish.
Oh, right, yeah. I didn't know. I saw this. I saw the
did he
the
do
obituary.
the gay flag?
No, he did not. He, prior to Stonewall, he was one of the most influential for tearing down the entrapment laws that were around gay bars. Did you know in 1966, when being a homosexual was illegal in New York City in my lifetime, that you couldn't gather, and that bartenders couldn't legally serve you a drink if you were homosexual because they were a thing. And the New York Times, even because gays were considered disorderly for no reason, which is why, as we know, that a lot of the gay bars were run by the mafia because they would pay off the police, and bars were constantly being raided. People couldn't, gay people, while they were this sort of not the safe haven, but they were the meeting place for gay people. They were constantly being raided. They were being put to jail. You could ruin your life, ruin your career, bring shame to your family, and so these laws were being sort of tested. And so Dick, along with a New York Post reporter and a photographer, went to a bar where he said, I want, whiskey sour, and said, but I haven't let you know I'm a homosexual. So the bartender, and they have this great shot of him putting his hand over the glass and denying him, and that brought attention to this. And he was a president of the Mattachine,
Mattachine Society,
the Mattachine Society, which is interesting because every movement kind of has its early leadership, and the Mattachine Society was because I was thinking about over Gay Pride weekend, because Gay Pride sometimes gets everyone's so wild and crazy, but the Mattachine Society would wear suits and ties
to help normalize
which is always a first step, right? You think of like Motown and Martin Luther King in the civil rights movement. They were trying to normalize, and sort of mainstream black. And then with Martin Luther King, it was about pacifists and peaceful resistance. But so in 66, he was doing this. He made a big thing. By 69, he was considered, when the Stonewall riots happened, he was considered old-fashioned. Like
they were into rioting, and they were into
being in your face, and it was more trans, and it was more inclusive. But and they looked at what he was doing as old fashioned. People, it's funny how movements move so quickly.
Yeah,
because it used to be like, well, let's assimilate, let's be part of the conversation.
Well, then it's act up, and then it's exactly.
Yes. And it was and you think about it musically, it's like it was the Supremes and Gowns. Then it was James Brown and Aretha Franklin. It was no longer like we're going to assimilate. We're the sound of young America. We are black and proud, and that's what Stonewall did. But you think about the bravery, or just how surreal it would be to live 52 years ago in a city where being gay, New York City, the Greenwich Village, it was illegal to be gay, and that this guy had the power and that
he was still around until just recently.
Yeah.
And I don't think he ever got his. I don't think he ever got his due, though. I don't think he was.
Michael Seligman, who works with us on different projects, has been a magazine writer, and he interviewed him a few years ago. And one of the things that's kind of interesting, Dick said one of the reasons he got involved was because there was a really cute boy he wanted to spend time with. So that's why he got involved in the activism. So whatever gets you there is a good thing. But Dick Leish, gay pioneer, rest in perfection.
Rest in power, Dick. We'll be right back after these messages.
You're listening to World of Wonders Wow Report.
Welcome back to the Wow Report. I'm millennial producer Blake Jacobs, and I'm listing some of the greats that we lost in 2018. And this next person who passed away in July was very important to a lot of us. He was pretty much the father of the Wow Report, Steven Saban. Let's listen.
Number 1.
Number one, I really wanted to take a moment and sort of just pay a little respect to somebody here at WOW who was it's a legend here at WOW, and just a legend all around. My friend, Steven Saban, who we recently lost this last week. Steven Saban, legendary nightlife author, Details magazine back when it was a fashion art nightlife magazine before it went mainstream. It was the magazine in New York to read. Steven Saban had a nightlife column that put him, catapulted him into just legendary status. Really, really funny, witty man. He started the blog here at Wow Report, Wow Report. Yeah. It was there for about 10 years, from 2004 to about 2013. He was someone that, God, I loved him so much. What a complicated, crazy man he was. I started out being a fan when I moved to New York. I was his big, and I would fangirl him, and I would chase him around the clubs. Write about me.
What year about?
This was 1984. Wow. I would chase him around, and I would jump up and down and say, "Look at my outfit, Steven. Look at my. Do you like this? Take a picture." And I would just chase, and I would drive him crazy. I went from being a fan to being a friend. He eventually, we would go travel around the country together, doing like the talk shows and things. And so I got to know him. Then when he moved out to LA, I really got to be friends with him, and we really became just like best friends. And he was a mentor, and he was my gay dad. He was the dad that I never, that sort of taught me the ropes of being gay. And we had a complicated relationship. We had a falling out a few years ago, and we were able to get back to it. We were able to get back to our friendship for the last couple of years. But he had pancreatic cancer, and that's a hard one. And the last few years were very hard on him. He went to go live with his daughter, and that's where he passed away. But I just wanted to just say just how much we loved him.
We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for him. He started the Wow Report,
and he started downtown. I mean, a lot of people don't realize he was the king of downtown. Andy Warhol, Steven Saban, Diane Brill, John Sachs. Those were the people in the 1980s that were the downtown. He had a lot of friends, Debbie Harry, a lot of people like that. Just the old school New York rock scene. Steven was just sort of defined cool. He had a real sardonic, a real like sort of curmudgeonly voice, and he wrote like sort of Addison DeWitt. Yeah, he was very
From
much
like,
that kind of New York character that just they don't really make anymore. Danny, you knew him a little bit.
Yeah, definitely like a grand observer. You know what I mean?
The Boswell of the night they called him. Yes.
Especially when we had the storefront gallery and we would all do shows and stuff. Like he was always so cool and just
standing in a corner, and you could go and stand in a corner and just talk about everybody with him.
I knew him and worked with him, and we used to all contribute to the Wow Report. At the whole office, when we were smaller, we would all write articles, and he'd always come by and correct your grammar and correct
Can I tell you? One of the
I learned so much from him.
That's the thing. He and I would argue
Yes, you
about
would.
an Oxford comma. We would go to the mat. we would scream and shout over a damn dangling participle, and he was always right.
He was always
right. And
you thought for sure, I've proofread this 17 times. It's ready to go.
And
you'd be right in your cubicle going, honey.
His love of language and his love of words, that was something he was very passionate about.
Yes.
And it showed because his writing was, you can go back to those columns and they are just as funny, just as witty, and just as well read. And every sentence is perfectly constructed.
Yes.
He's a brilliant man.
You guys did have, from the outside, you did have a very hot relationship. But it's those weird times when people pass, you just realize that's life, baby. And it's not all beep.
The thing
up
is,
and down and fabulous.
It was a cage match. We were put in this little tiny room together, and we're both very outsized personalities. We're both very big, and we would, like I said, we would just go with hammer and tongs on each other.
I just remember us when we did the art shows. We'd have a month of prep, like 2 weeks before the opening, like hanging everything the day of. Then everything would go up, and then he would you'd want me to send him pictures with captions like at 1 in the morning. So it could be like up in the morning. And how many times...
just a really interesting, spectacular, complicated, fabulous, wonderful man. And we're all going to
And I
miss
think
him.
the first time I heard this expression, I heard it from Stephen Saban, and that's rest in perfection.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
So Stephen Saban, wow. Yes, exactly.
Just give him some stats.
We love you, Steven. Rest in perfection. Now, next up, I didn't know much about Nancy Sinatra Sr. It was actually Nancy Sinatra Jr. and Frank Sinatra Jr. and Christina Sinatra's mother with Frank Sinatra. But Tom Campbell definitely schooled us on her, and she was quite an interesting lady. Let's listen.
Number 7.
In someone's passing, you have that moment to reflect on their lives and a whole era. And I follow Nancy Sinatra, These Boots Are Made for Walking, on Twitter. And she announced this past week that her mother, Nancy Barbados Sinatra, yes,
I do remember hearing. Did
Randy.
you think there's a long lost connection?
They're from New Jersey, right?
Yeah, but she
I
died.
imagine there's 10,000 Barbados in New Jersey.
But Nancy Sinatra died at 101, the mother, Frank's first wife, and confidant, they say in the New York Times. Now, Barbado is the same name as Randy Barbado, who's Fenton's co-founder of World of Wonder. I asked Randy yesterday, doing some deep investigative reporting, and he said, I don't think so. But how many Barbados are there in Jersey?
No, but that's what I'm saying. I'm thinking there are 100,000.
Where in Jersey? That's the key. If it's Booten.
It doesn't say Booten, but look how cute they are. She married
She is beautiful.
Frank Sinatra in 1939 when he was a singing waiter. Can you imagine? Because there's no bigger star in the world today, yesterday, forever than Frank Sinatra, and she married him just at the cusp, just the moment. And they
Was
talk
she
about
responsible for his rise as the Bobby Soxer?
Well, they talk about she was the one making meatless lasagna, so there would be to stretch a dollar. She made her own clothes. She traveled with him. She took care of him. It's that very first wife story, right?
Right, but was she a Kris Jenner type thing where she was a part of his success, or was she just?
She's not presented that way, but just as sort of the dutiful wife who stood beside him, who gave birth to his 3 children.
All 3.
Yes. Nancy Sinatra Jr., Frank Sinatra Jr., and Christina Sinatra, who of course is Tina. And Frank Jr. has gone on, but she is survived by Nancy and by Tina. I'm also a big, speaking of Sirius Radio, I'm a big Seriously Sinatra listener, and I love when Nancy does her show. But her name was Nancy Rose. Her maiden name was Barbado, and she was just kind of beautiful Italian lady.
And what happened to her when Barbara came along?
Well, it's before Barbara. They were divorced.
Oh, there was Ava.
It was 1939. They got married. 1951, they got divorced.
Okay.
In
like 11 years.
Yes. Yeah. But during that time, he blew up.
That's when he was
the Bobby
biggest
Soxer.
star. Yeah.
And he was, rumored to be having affairs and was having affairs, no doubt, with lots and lots of women. I mean,
Lana Turner of Ava Gabor.
Yeah, it's one of these things that you can't even imagine being Frank Sinatra and not having affairs. You know what I'm saying? And you can't imagine. But at first, she sort of put it off and did not marry him because he fell in love. He had lots of affairs, but he fell in love with Ava Gardner.
Yeah.
And moments after.
Did I say Ava Gabor? Is that what I've been saying?
Did. That's why
I'm so
here.
embarrassed.
But
Ava Gardner.
He said Lana Turner, but Ava Gardner, and they had
the most beautiful woman on the planet.
Absolutely, and a big boozers, both of them. He also, and she remained quiet all those years. And they're saying here that she was his confidant. She was his midnight call, not a booty call, but midnight call. And the grandson says that oftentimes the phone would ring, grandma would be on the phone, and the next thing you know, she'd be taking some eggplant out of the freezer because Frank was coming over for like a late night snack and a confidant. Frank had some high profile romances and engagements. First to Juliet Prowse. Do you remember this? And then he was engaged to Lauren Bacall.
Wasn't she when she had nylon commercials in the 70s?
And those ones. And then he had a very unfortunate, short-lived marriage to Mia Farrow, who was like Nancy's age. Was like very young. And again,
during Rosemary's Baby is when they fell in love.
And quiet through all of that. And but they stayed close. And when they divorced, she was given the house in Holmby Hills that I think she had the rest of her life, like the Cadillac, and an annual percentage of his income.
Oh, because I was going to say, I was a little worried that she died in poverty or something. No, she did okay for herself.
That's a good deal.
Right. Yeah.
That's a good deal. And, she never married again. Dutiful Catholic wife. She was there for him. She was there for her children. And
what did she look like at the end?
She hardly, there is. She's cute.
Oh, okay. Yeah, she's an older Italian woman.
Yeah, but she looks like your mom, right? And this last thing to close it up is she rarely gave interviews, but I guess in the 90s she was asked, why didn't you remarry? And her answer was impeccable. After Sinatra?
It's true.
So, rest in perfection, Nancy Rose Barbados Sinatra, who lived to an amazing age of 101.
And did it in style, I guess.
Amen.
She died on Friday, July 13th.
Nancy Sinatra Sr. passed away July 13th in Beverly Hills. She was 101. Now, someone else in the music industry that we lost last year was the Queen of Soul, Aretha Franklin. Let's listen.
Number 10.
Aretha Franklin.
Oh.
I'm speaking obviously as a fan. I don't know Aretha Franklin, and prayers and blessings to her and her loved ones and her family. It's just hit me hard this week because while Aretha is so. Is it unparalleled? Is that the word? That I love so many. I love Diana Ross. I love so many. I love Madonna. Aretha is truly in a class of her own.
And she has an iconicity that actually we normally only think of those who've passed on.
Yes.
Often. She's that level of star that...
Yeah, exactly. And the fact is we don't always appreciate her because she's so brilliant in everything she does. And she's done so much that she's sort of bypassed.
Yes.
She's no longer a pop star.
Yes.
She's
like Mount Rushmore. She's something that's always been, that will always be. And it's an odd sort of melancholy. And so I've been exploring her catalog, just going online as we do. And obviously, she's only had 2 number 1 songs her whole career, although she was the first woman to be inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But the first one was Respect.
Because some of them only went to like number 2 and number 3, like that. Like Chain.
Tons of hits.
Yes,
But Respect is number 1. And the other number 1.
I Knew You Were Waiting.
Knew You Were Waiting for Me.
Yeah,
with George Michael.
with George Michael.
Now, do you know that song?
I knew you were waiting for me.
I do not
It was
know
a
that.
duet in the 80s.
It went to number 1 in the UK.
It went to
Number 1 in the
everywhere.
U.S.
And it's interesting because it's
was in China.
watch the video, listen to the song. I was listening to it yesterday in my car.
It's a good song.
And I was bawling. It connected with, this is like, forgive me, because this is going to be like me telling you a dream. You're going to be like, what are you talking about? But they say that when people are close to death, and I've been with 2 people in the room when they're close to death, they start to see people that are dead. Like you hear them talking to their fathers or people who have passed before them. And I have experienced that with people that I've been with. And so I put on Knew You Were Waiting for Me, which has always been an anthemic, beautiful song, but it never really made sense as a love song because it's George Michael and Aretha Franklin. But I started listening to it sort of in the ears of like paying tribute to Aretha and that George has passed and that he's waiting for Aretha. I know that's just my interpretation, but it's so, and it's sort of these, it becomes like this much like I used to be so morose as a youngster that I would like imagine the playlist for my funeral.
Oh, sure.
And
We've all done
I
that.
haven't done that in a while, but I'm starting again.
I still do it all the time. Every night I go
Knew
home.
You Were Waiting for Me, and we'll play it later, but like a warrior that fights and wins the battle, I know the taste of victory. Aretha. Though I went through some nights consumed by the shadows, I was crippled emotionally. We know with Aretha, she's infamous for having depression, for being dark, for having obsessions, all that kind of stuff, but it never took away from her
for
genius.
some of her celebrity feuds
Yes.
with Beyonce.
Yes.
Remember when she came for Beyonce for saying that Tina Turner was the Queen of Soul, and she was furious.
But doesn't take away from her genius.
She doesn't fight. She fights with Dionne Warwick. Remember, she's had some feuds.
Oh, Patti LaBelle.
Patti LaBelle. Yes.
Well, let me go back to my so, and then George comes in with the lyric, somehow I made it through the heartache. Yes, I did. I escaped. I found my way out of the darkness, kept my faith. When the river was deep, I didn't falter. When the mountain was high, I still believed. When the valley was low, it didn't stop me because I knew you were waiting for me. And there's just something about faith in that, and I don't know what I believe. I don't know if my mom and dad are really in heaven or if I'm ever going to find them, but some part of me connects to that myth or that thought. And the idea that when we die, we escape. And I do feel that, like there's so much bad, I used to be such a cynical little kid when people would go to funerals and everybody would be like, oh, so-and-so's such a wonderful person. It's like, you didn't think that when you were with them. Or even though I've lost my parents and we used to have conflict, but when they passed, all that conflict goes away and you just have sort of their spirit and their essence and their beauty. And I don't know, I have been bawling in my car listening to on the loop, Knew You Were Waiting for Me.
Well, I've told you that Knew You Were Waiting for Me has special meaning for me too, and I cry every time I hear it because I was at Ralph's one time and it was playing over the loudspeaker and Colton Haynes walked by me and looked at me and we had a moment and I realized that he has been waiting for me his whole life, and so I often think about that song and cry over Colton.
Though we were drawn together through destiny, I know this love was meant to be because I knew you were waiting for me.
But you got to think of sisters are doing it for themselves with Annie Lennox. Oh, you got it. One of the great moments of her career was at the Grammys when Placido Domingo was sick and 2 hours beforehand he had to bow out and she came on and sang that aria from like the Traviata or something like that with no preparation. She just got on stage and belted it out and it was unbelievable. An opera fanatic said that it was as good as anything they've heard.
And she's a songwriter and she's on so much.
Remember when she was on when she came out and just belted for Carole King at the
A Natural Woman at the Kennedy Center Honors. I can't even watch that yet. I have to wait.
It's so amazing. I saw it the other day.
And supposedly people are paying their last respects. Stevie Wonder was there in person. So
rest in power to the Queen of Soul. We'll be right back after these messages.
You're listening to World of Wonders Wow Report.
Welcome back to the Wow Report, everyone. I'm Blake Jacobs, the millennial producer. Tom, James, and Fenton are all out still enjoying their families for the holidays. And this week, I am listing some of the greats that we lost last year in 2018. It's our Rest in Perfection episode. And last year, we lost one of the most handsome men ever, Burt Reynolds. Let's listen.
Number 9.
Because we pre-taped a little bit early last week, we missed a big story, which we want to talk about today, which is the passing of Mr. Burt Reynolds. Yeah. Blake's a different generation. To me,
that one Cosmo spread though is multi-generational.
Yes, and it's funny because now that I'm getting to be an old fart, I feel like when reporters write obituaries about Burt Reynolds, they don't know who he was. They didn't live through it, and like even that Cosmo cover, it's like it sort of cost him the Oscars. He had just done a big role after being an actor in TV for like over a decade. Was Deliverance, and he was going to be up for an Oscar, and he did that spread.
And so he wasn't taken seriously anymore.
Yes,
and he never was taken seriously again.
No, because he was so. And yet he did that in a very progressive. It was women's liberation. We didn't see a lot of nudity, and he really
certainly no male celebrity ever.
And it was super smart and super sarcastic and super political in a way. But he was a little bit belittled because of it.
That's such a shame.
It is. I mean, he had an amazing run.
From the 60s when he was on Gunsmoke and
so after he
Twilight Zone, Alfred Hitchcock Presents,
Dan August
was the Bandit and all that stuff after.
Oh yeah,
Deliverance. Yes.
Yeah.
So in the 60s he was like a working actor and he was handsome and he got a lot of work, but he wasn't a big star, but he had a name. And then he was in Dan August, which is his first like series. I think it was on one season, but he didn't have the mustache yet and he still had his hair, but it was receding. Yeah, it was like a cop show. And during that time he was married to Judy Carne, who was the British crazy actress, saw it to me from Laugh-In.
Jim Carne's mom?
No. And who years later, I saw her like in New York at a cabaret in the 80s talking about her marriage to Burt. Like she just turned it into anyway. So there was that. And then, everyone's talking about Sally Field, and we will in a minute. But then in the early 70s, Burt was with an older woman.
Dinah Shore.
In love with Dinah Shore.
I did know that.
And there's great pictures. There's lots of pictures of them, but there's great pictures of them at the Oscars like in 74. And he's so sexy. sexy and the thing.
But
she's wearing the skin tight sequined gown, the long sleeve. They just and she was in her 50s and he was in his 30s, and it was a little bit scandalous, but they look so good together.
But they were also maybe each other's beards, is what people have maybe implied.
I can go deeper. Dinah Shore, my friend Charlie Colarusso, God rest his soul, who was a producer on the Dinah Show for years and years and years, and therefore met everyone, because Dinah Shore was kind of like friends with presidents. She was part of the real social scene. He said she's not. Maybe she was bisexual, but he has lots of evidence of her with Frank Gifford would drop by at times, and the dressing room door would close. Burt Reynolds. The only thing that Charlie said about Burt and Dinah, because Dinah had Hollywood Regency and was this incredible hostess, and he goes, everything in her house got thrown out and it was all tooled leather. It was like Burt turned her on to some sort of Southwestern stuff. So then he does Smokey Man and the Bandit, which was just like the apex. It was like perfect. It's funny, in a world where we're divided by the red states and blue states, everybody on my Facebook page is like, we miss Smokey and the Bandit, gays and blue states and red states. And he met Sally and they fell in love, and they had this. Now we're finding out now that he's dead. Sally has a book coming out, which we'll have to read and talk about. But she says, there's a headline in the New York Times that she's kind of glad Burt won't be there to read.
Because,
because it was a complicated relationship.
Well, he was a problematic man.
Yes.
He later, his relationship with Lonnie Anderson turned very,
and I
violent,
I think there's two things that took him down, and they're sort of our own demons, which is what happens, which is even Sally Field says during Smoking the Bandit, he was taking barbiturates and getting mystery shots and stuff. And then when he married Lonnie Anderson, which was the perfect coupling, right?
The perfect 80s union of celebrity.
And got so much publicity, and then it went so bad. And I can't tell you the details. All I know is that they hated each other and they tore each other down, or the press played it that way.
In public. They did in public, and in front of their kids and all that and everything.
And I also found out, I didn't know that, but Quentin, who's the son that Lonnie and Burt adopted and that Lonnie raised, passed away a while ago. So there's sadness there. But Burt, there was no one, it's hard to tell people.
He did have a great comeback, though, with
Boogie Nights.
Boogie Nights, yeah. And he was almost nominated for an Oscar again.
But I feel like, his demons took him down. But
And he was nominated for an Oscar.
Yes, he didn't win. He lost to Robin Williams from Good Will Hunting, so there you have it. But just a remembrance, and when I think I'm the right age where the outline and the silhouette of Burt Reynolds' chest hair will live in my mind forever. All right, rest in perfection, Mr. Burt Reynolds.
Seriously, if you haven't ever seen Burt Reynolds' Cosmo spread from back in the 70s, Google it. It's really hot. We lost another great friend in Wow Celebrity last year, Fun Tone Records founder and the man who may have actually discovered RuPaul, Dick Richards. Let's listen.
Number 1.
It's bittersweet. A really good friend of mine and Randy and RuPaul's, a friend to us all really, Dick Richards, who was the founder of Funtone Records and the creator of the American Music Show. And he lived in Atlanta, and many people, of course, have discovered RuPaul. In fact, there's no discovering RuPaul because RuPaul discovered it himself.
Correct.
But along the way, Ru went to Atlanta and went on the American Music Show.
Which was?
A cable access show.
The kids don't know what cable access is.
In the living room. It was a public access show. It was a show just made on a dime and a dream. Yeah. And it was made in Dick Richards' living room on his house on Adolphus Street. It's so weird. I remember the number. 1714 Adolphus Street. Front living room. The American Music Show. It was a crazy...
Kind of like a talk show, variety show?
Talk show, variety show, zoo show, rolling chaos. But so many acts came out of it. The Singing Peak Sisters. La, 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 la.
Tiandra Peak, yes.
Peak.
Phoebe Legere, apparently, yeah.
Angie Bowie.
She
had to go somewhere after...
The Now Explosion with Larry Chi and Lahoma.
Ru's first band, Wee Wee Paul.
Yeah, Wee Wee Paul. And some fabulous Pop-Tarts.
Yes, the
Randy and Fenton's group.
We went on the show. And then, of course, Dick really, there are many stories of how we met RuPaul, and we can't really remember, but Dick was instrumental because we were in Atlanta and we saw Ru wheat pasting, and he made the connection and introduced us.
And is that picture in the Wow book, that group picture?
It's a fabulous picture.
We should post that.
No, but
because
Dick
that's an amazing moment.
Dick took the picture. Dick isn't in the picture.
No, but it captures...
On the front porch?
It captures that moment. It's his house?
Yes.
Yeah.
On the front porch of his house with David Goldman, Michael Musto, Trade, Albert Crudo.
How'd you know about him from New York? Do you remember?
How did you meet Dick?
How did we meet Dick? The Pop Tarts.
Because he was in
were
Atlanta
playing-
and you guys were in New
That's
York.
right. The Pop Tarts were playing in.
Were you touring?
We were on tour, of the summer. And we were in Atlanta doing a gig, and that's how we met Dick. And he took us around, and there was RuPaul wheat pasting pictures of himself.
I do want to mention that last night that RuPaul mentioned Dick at the top of his speech and said that he wanted to thank Dick Richards. Dick had been suffering from leukemia for 9 years, I believe, and it had been sort of a hard time for his friends. But it's a beautiful.
You know, the thing about Dick was, I mean, look, you know, we're all crazy, and Dick was just. Nothing bothered him. He was always so sweet and loving. And even when people were assholes or bitter or twisted, he'd just go, oh, well. You know, that lovely quality of stonedness. And I'm not saying he was stoned, but he had that perpetual glow of someone
southern,
he could roll with it.
back.
He rolled with everything.
And he was also a childhood best friend with Nelson Sullivan, who is the spiritual godfather of World of Wonder.
Mm-hmm.
And they both have that same sort of quality
And
about
Nelson
them.
spent most of the 80s documenting the club scene with his video camera, his big old video camera.
Right.
And those things are on YouTube, and they're fascinating to watch.
Yeah.
So you can check out the American Music Show on YouTube. You can check out Nelson Sullivan's videos on YouTube, and Funtone Records, who had the best slogan of all, which was, if it ain't fun, don't do it. And I think that's a great.
Wow.
It's good for life.
Yeah, there's a Funtone museum online in which there's like hundreds and hundreds of videos from the American Music Show that are just fascinating.
And what was it you just posted, James? The Funtone on the Wow Report?
Yeah, well, we did sort of a little tribute to him with a lot of friends talking about Dick, and it's sort of interesting.
And it is amazing to see, and there's lots of other performers, but it's amazing at this moment this week to see RuPaul on that show.
Yes.
And how extremely not mainstream or center or legitimate or whatever it was, just how out there and
unpolished, I think is the
but
word.
it was just a full wild expression to the Emmy stage.
Yes. And yet also fully formed. The RuPaul you see in those shows.
Oh, yeah.
Bar, some waiter boots and some ratty old wigs. It's the same RuPaul. It's the same energy.
Mentally, it's the same energy, but I always wonder, would RuPaul be able to get on RuPaul's Drag Race in that incarnation?
Well, that's an interesting question.
Time changes everything. In a
I just
beautiful
want to
way.
say this. I love Dick.
Oh, we all do.
What an interesting life Dick Richards lived. Rest in power, Dick. Now, next up is one of the younger people on this list. He was a designer, and he actually passed away from a freak accident while body surfing in Hawaii. It's Jonathan Scow, Mr. Turk. Let's listen.
Number 8.
Number 8. I'm sorry to bring it down, but we lost Mr. Turk. Mr. Turk, husband of Trina Turk, and the guy responsible for the men's line, which I know, James, we both are a huge fan of his
counted. I have over 40 of his suits.
Yeah. I have mainly trousers, and I would even buy sizes too big or too small because I just love the pattern so much.
Very famous for its sort of mid-century Palm Springs style,
Yes.
wild, bold geographic prints.
Wild things that you would see on crazy dresses he would put into a man's suit.
Yes.
Yeah, lots
Normally,
of
or
floral patterns.
Curtain fabrics. Like,
Lots of 50s,
just you in the curtains.
50s wallpaper type things.
And he was in his earlier mid-50s.
Oh my God, he was so young. He was
55.
55, right?
And he just, he started the line in 2008, so it's only been around for 10 years. But it became sort of a staple of red carpet culture here in Los Angeles, where it's they were easy outfits. They popped on the red carpet,
right.
they popped in a picture, and they were always under $1,000. So
And it wasn't just some plain black suit.
What?
It wasn't just some plain black suit.
No. Making a real statement.
And WeHo Queens loved it. I mean, you anytime you went to a GLAAD Awards or something, half the audience was in it. Ross Matthews, Carson Kressley,
yes.
RuPaul, Andy
gonna
Cohen.
say.
They're all people who wear it frequently.
Rue would always say to Carson or Matthews, or I'm between 10, like, I love that suit. Where'd it come from? There, Mr. Turk.
Mr. Turk. Does Mr. Turk and Moods of Norway sort of compete in the same
Yes.
space
Yes.
for highly technicolored, bold, patterned? But certainly, you got a 70s vibe, right? 70s vibe?
50s, 60s, 70s, yeah,
50s,
all
60s,
of them,
70s.
yeah.
And but he was a body surfer, and on Labor Day he was body surfing, and I guess got caught by a wave and was left paralyzed, which is terrible.
And then, he'd been in the hospital since September 7th.
So I feel less bad about going home, lying on my side and watching Netflix.
But I'm
going to live longer.
There's a beautiful tribute from his wife, and she said his big, beautiful life ended. And this is true. I mean, he was a powerful force of nature. I only met him in an elevator once, so I didn't really get to experience the full force of nature. But the day he died, there was a very rare but huge thunder and lightning storm.
That's true.
That was his exit.
You know, I'll tell you so. I only met him once, and it was in Palm Springs, and I was at the store, and I was trying on an outfit, and all of a sudden I heard, "You simply can't wear that. It looks terrible on you." And I said, "What?" And it was him standing there. He said, "No, the color's all wrong. You need this, this, and this."
Was he right?
He was right.
Did you?
I still bought it, but he still, but he was saying, "No, you can't wear this. This color is wrong for you, and I want you to wear this color, and you should wear this color." And he was very exuberant and very fabulous, and a really just an interesting guy.
But someone else we lost this week, and it's a tenuous connection, is Mario Buata. Mario Buata?
Yeah.
The Prince of Chintz. James, I suppose you don't remember him from...
I totally remember Mario
New
Buata.
York
I just can't believe he's still around.
Just
How
passed
old
away,
was he?
82. New York designer, interior designer, famous for his love of chintz, which is printed cotton fabric with a glazed finish. Lovely sort of voluptuous bouquets and blossoms and roses.
It was a very 80s pattern.
Very 80s.
Yeah.
But it was, in a way, he was the 80s version of Mr. Turk. Like
kind of.
In interior, it's a big, bold, loud, visual extravaganza.
See, that's so weird because I remember him in the 80s, and I remember, he was always in Susie.
He was also a larger than life figure.
Yeah,
too.
but I thought he was old in the 80s. I can't believe. I thought he was like in his 80s in the 80s.
Well,
I just want to thank whoever was the first person that came up with Prince of Chintz. That kind of
I remember a whole article in Manhattan Inc., which was the magazine of the 80s because big business was such a big thing. They had his own magazine, and I just remember he was the cover story, Prince of Chintz.
Yeah. I love that movie, Big Business, too.
Yeah.
Talk about your tenuous connections. My goodness.
Mr. Turk, rest in perfection. You were way too young. We'll be right back after this.
You're listening to World of Wonders Wow Report. Things that make us go wow.
Welcome back to the Wow Report, everyone. I'm Blake, the millennial producer, and Tom, James, and Fenton are still enjoying the holidays with their family. I am listing some of the great people that we've lost in 2018. This is our Rest in Perfection episode, and we're down to the final entry of the list. On November 12th, here in L.A., we lost Stan Lee, Mr. Marvel, at the age of 95. Let's listen.
Number one.
Oh, it's a sad one.
Stan Lee passed away. Now, it's interesting because, when that first happens, it's been such a horrible week because of the fires and the shootings before the fires. And I always want to keep feeling away from me. There's just too much happening. There's too much sadness. I try to pick and choose. And when Stan Lee dies, I think, not in a mean way, but I don't need to process this. But then you just take a moment. And Stan Lee, whether you're a comic fan or action hero fan, his 95 years, he affected so much pop culture. And we live in a world that's largely shaped pop culture by Stan Lee. So it's quite a lot.
Spider-Man, Ant-Man, Fantastic Four,
Doctor Strange,
Doctor Strange,
Daredevil, Black Panther, X-Men, on and on.
Ant-Man.
Even characters, Marvel-created characters, I didn't even realize were Marvel comics.
Right.
Now I can't think of any examples.
And could he have a bigger moment right now? Like a lot of times when people die at 95, it's like, let's talk about their accomplishments in the 40s or 50s or 60s or 70s. That franchise and those characters, I think this year, like 3 of his
Black
franchises.
Panther is one of the biggest films of all time.
Yes, and that with Ant-Man and
the Avengers,
And Fenton loved Thor Ragnarok.
I do too. I think it's one of the best movies of all time.
It is.
It's a fantastic
movie.
It's
camp
so
classic.
good, and it's so well written. It's beautiful. beautifully
very
directed.
clever,
Yeah,
hilarious.
you know the director, don't you?
Yeah, Taika
Yeah.
Waititi.
But I do want to say, when you read back about his history, and he started in 1939. He was 16 years old. He was a sweep. He was a gopher at a comic book place. But by
Marvel, he started that.
It was called Time Comics or something like that.
It was basically the same guy.
Yeah. Then at age 19, he took over as editor-in-chief of the country. Age 19. Then he went to World War II. He came back, and that's when he started Spider-Man and all those things.
And they were talking about how in the 40s comic books were really big and people watched them, and then TV came along, and there was a government movement that comic books were bad for kids.
I got lost in the whole comic code authority story.
Yeah,
It's
in the early
fascinating.
50s, comic books just shut down. There was no DC, there was no Marvel,
and so his wife is the one. She passed away last year. They were together for like 60 years or something. She said, why don't you write what you want to write? And that's when Spider-Man started and all that
Which
kind of
was
stuff.
their biggest.
Yeah.
And I remember my brother loving Spider-Man in the 60s
I
so
love
much.
Spider-Man too. I was
angst.
like 6, and I had it was a sort of first erotic inclination.
Yeah,
he was so hot.
He
in
was.
that
But
outfit.
the thing about Marvel is that they incorporated real storylines, things that were happening in real life. They were also the first heroes that were conflicted. There was lots of gray areas in morality, everything like that.
And
that
it was
had never
during the
been done in
60s and
comedy.
70s when we were largely a progressive society, and so
there
a
was
lot of issues of race and
drugs and things like that all
know,
seeped into the comic books.
It was his childhood dream to write the great American novel. I guess he kind of did better than that.
did.
He kind of created the entire American culture.
It's a little bit. It's like Shakespeare or it's like Greek plays or something like that, where these are the myths of our time.
Yes.
Batman, Spider-Man. These are all the things that we go back to time and time again.
I was also reading that there's some controversy surrounding him because people say he's the creator, and then there were always the artists and how it worked.
With Joe Kirby, he worked a long time with Joe Kirby, but a lot of it, he was the creator or co-creator of these things.
That much money and that, creation is a very flexible, specious kind of thing, right? But even with a little bit of controversy surrounding it, I feel like it's.
He did have the last 10 years were very hard. He was there were some
lawsuits
there was lawsuits. There was some elder abuse allegations, things like that. His wife had died. He had a lot of illnesses, and he ended up suing Marvel and then getting some money.
And you sent me that link of different artists.
Listen, there's a bunch of artists that were doing pictures, and there was one that really spoke. He's at the pearly gates, and God says, you weren't bad at building universes too. And it's
you weren't so bad. But it's this beautiful. We should post it on the Wow Report if you didn't already. But it's just beautiful artistic tributes to him, like all his cartoon
and
characters.
all the cartoon characters crying at his grave and everything. It's really nice.
I am tearing up again.
Yeah.
Twice
What a
in one
life!
show.
What a life!
Yes.
Now, these aren't all the people we lost in 2018. That show would go on for way too long, unfortunately, but just a few. Rest in perfection, everyone. I want to remind everyone that RuPaul's Drag Race All-Stars 4 is currently airing every Friday night on VH1, 8 p.m. Tune in, and also get your tickets for RuPaul's DragCon at RuPaulsDragCon.com. And watch $1 Million Listing at Los Angeles every Thursday on Bravo. And until next week, go out and do something that makes the world go wow.